This is the story of Brynna, a hardworking waitress in a roadside diner, and the unexpected opportunity hidden beneath an empty receipt. A $0 tip. A long shift. A tired single mother just trying to survive. But Brynna chose to look twice, and that small decision changed everything. Most people would have walked away. They would have cleared the table, shaken their head, and moved on to the next customer. Because when you're tired, underpaid, and barely holding life together, you don't have the energy to look for meaning in empty spaces. But Brynna didn't walk away. And because of that, everything changed. The receipt lay on the table. Not a single coin. No loose change. No rounded up dollar. Just a blank line where hope usually lived. For Brynna, standing in the middle of a busy roadside diner with the hum of voices, clinking plates, and the smell of coffee in the air, that empty space felt heavier than the entire shift she had just worked. She stood there for a moment too long. Not because she was angry. But because she was tired. Tired in the way that settles deep into your chest. The kind of tired that comes from always trying, always stretching, always hoping the math will somehow work out this time. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. Because this wasn't just about money. It was about being reminded, again, that life rarely slows down for people who are already doing their best. Brynna was 27 years old. A single mother. And always one bill away from everything falling apart. She worked double shifts at a classic roadside diner just outside Willow Creek, Oregon, a town that sat quietly between highways, easy to miss, easy to forget. The diner had cracked vinyl booths, handwritten pie specials, and regulars who liked their mornings predictable. Brynna's life was anything but. Her mornings began before sunrise. She packed snacks and crayons into a small backpack, kissed her 4-year-old daughter Lumi on the forehead, and walked her next door to stay with a kind neighbor before heading to work. Lumi had big eyes, endless questions, and a laugh that filled the room. She believed the world was mostly good, even when the world hadn't given her much proof yet. Brynna tied her apron, poured coffee for strangers, and smiled until her cheeks ached. She wore exhaustion like a second uniform. It showed in the way she leaned against the counter when no one was watching. In the way her shoulders slumped after the lunch rush. In the small drawing Lumi had made, a crooked stick-figure family, folded carefully and tucked into her apron pocket. That afternoon had been especially long. The lunch rush spilled into late afternoon. Orders piled up. Someone complained about cold toast. Someone else snapped for a refill they hadn't finished. And then he walked in. He wore a coat that didn't belong in a place like this. Not flashy, just well-made. He carried himself with quiet confidence, the kind that didn't need to prove anything. He slid into a booth by the window and looked around, taking everything in. Brynna didn't know his name. She didn't know that people recognized it in boardrooms and headlines. All she saw was another customer. So she treated him like everyone else. She brought his coffee before he asked. Took his order carefully. Checked on him once more than usual, not because he asked, but because something about his distant gaze made her wonder if he needed something he wasn't saying. He thanked her softly. Spoke little. Ate in silence. When he finished, he placed his utensils neatly together on the plate, stood, and walked out without another word. No goodbye. When Brynna returned to clear the table, she picked up the receipt. And there it was. Total paid. Tip, $0. Her chest tightened, not with anger, but with disappointment she knew too well. She thought about the grocery list taped to her fridge. The rent due in 10 days. The shoes Lumi was starting to outgrow. The quiet calculations she made every night, hoping the numbers would somehow stretch. She swallowed hard. Then she reminded herself of something she'd learned the hard way. Kindness wasn't supposed to come with conditions. She wiped the table carefully and stacked the plate. But it didn't move. It caught on something underneath. Brynna frowned and lifted the plate again, slower this time. Tucked beneath the edge was a folded piece of paper. Her name was written on it. Just Brynna. No last name. No explanation. Her heart started to race, not with fear, but with a strange, almost sacred curiosity. She waited until the diner quieted, until the rush faded and the noise softened. Then she sat down in the booth and unfolded the paper. Inside was a handwritten note. Simple. Honest. It talked about observation. About noticing how she spoke gently to every customer, even the difficult ones. How she kept a child's drawing tucked into her apron pocket. How she worked with dignity, even when the day gave her no reason to. Brynna felt her throat tighten as she read. The note ended with a single sentence that made her sit back, breath caught halfway in. This is not a tip. It's an opportunity. Behind the note was a business card. And folded beneath it, a check. The number wasn't outrageous. That was the strange part. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't unbelievable. It was exactly what she needed. Enough to cover rent. Enough for childcare. Enough to breathe again. Her vision blurred anyway. Not because of the money. But because someone had seen her. The card carried one name. Calder. No title. No explanation. Just a phone number. No promises. No pressure. Just a door cracked open. That night, Brynna went home different. She held Lumi longer than usual, listening to her excited chatter about shapes she'd learned that day. She laughed more easily. And for the first time in a long while, something unfamiliar bloomed in her chest. Possibility. The next morning, Brynna sat in her car for nearly 20 minutes before dialing the number. Her hands trembled as the phone rang. When someone answered, they didn't rush her. They listened. Weeks passed. Then months. Brynna didn't quit her job. She didn't change overnight. She learned that Calder ran a foundation focused on overlooked talent in small towns like Willow Creek. He believed dignity came from work, not rescue. The note hadn't been a test of obedience. It was a test of attention. Would she notice what others ignored? She had. And that decision, to look twice instead of walking away, would quietly change everything. But the real transformation. The first meeting didn't happen in an office. That surprised Brynna. She had imagined something formal, glass walls, polished desks, people in suits speaking quickly and expecting her to keep up. Instead, Calder suggested they meet at a small public library just outside town. Neutral ground. No pressure. Brynna arrived early, hands folded tightly in her lap, heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. She felt out of place in her worn jacket, surrounded by shelves of books she hadn't had time to read in years. Calder arrived right on time. The same quiet presence. The same calm eyes. He didn't talk much at first. He asked questions. About the diner. About Lumi. About how Brynna managed her days. He listened carefully, like every detail mattered, not just the big struggles, but the small ones too. When she finished talking, he nodded slowly. You notice things, he said simply. Brynna blinked. I don't think I do anything special. That's usually who does, he replied. He explained that his foundation worked with people who were already holding things together, people who didn't ask for help because they were too busy being responsible. His belief was simple: real dignity comes from opportunity, not rescue. He wasn't offering her an escape. He was offering her tools. The months that followed didn't feel dramatic from the outside. Brynna still worked the same shifts. Still wiped tables. Still packed Lumi's backpack every morning. Still felt tired at the end of the day. But something inside her had shifted. She started learning. Not in classrooms, but in conversations. She learned how small businesses ran. How schedules were built. How inventory could be tracked better. How tiny changes could make work easier for everyone. She realized something surprising. She was good at this. Organizing chaos. Seeing inefficiencies. Helping people feel calmer just by putting things in the right place. The diner owner noticed too. At first, it was small things, asking Brynna's opinion on scheduling. Letting her reorder supplies. Trusting her with training new hires. Then one afternoon, he sat across from her in a booth and said, "You ever think about managing this place?" Brynna laughed, caught off guard. "Me? You already do," he said. "You just don't get paid for it yet." With Calder's guidance and a modest grant from the foundation, the diner began to change, slowly, intentionally. Better systems. Fairer schedules. A few small updates that made the space brighter and more welcoming. It became more than a diner. It became a place where other parents could work flexible hours. Where regulars lingered longer. Where people felt seen. Years passed. Not all at once. Not magically. But steadily. One afternoon, Brynna stood behind the counter, watching Lumi sit at the end of the booth doing homework. Confident now. Chatty. Safe. The same diner, but brighter. Louder with laughter. Once a year, Calder still came by. Always the same booth. Always quiet. Always no tip. Just a note. Each one was different, but the message was always the same. The world doesn't always change loudly. Sometimes it changes quietly, under a plate, waiting for someone who's paying attention. Brynna kept every note. Not as reminders of what she'd been given, but of what she'd noticed. And every time she cleared a table, she looked twice. Because she knew now. Sometimes what looks like nothing changes everything. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to the channel so stories like this can reach the people who need them most. Before you go, tell us in the comments. What one word describes how this story made you feel, and where are you watching from? Your words matter more than you know. Because sometimes, the smallest moments carry the biggest meaning.